Hey, Clemson family, signing day, or at least early signing day 2024 is in the books. A lot of talent coming in. Daniel and I are both high on this class. We'll get into the details of why, and maybe we'll take a little peek at an upcoming game as well, won't we?
I'm Daniel Shirley. Yeah, well, there's a game coming up Friday. I'll be there. I'm excited about that. Last chance to see our son Ben on the sideline with the Tigers. So, really excited about that. I'm not going to scream and yell about signing day. I'm going to keep all those opinions to myself. Bill's already mad at me for picking on signing day before this segment, but we'll do that on a later edition of the podcast.
We'll run through who's coming in. Come on. And some of these Georgia guys, you're familiar with them. You'll be able to let us know. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Don't ever miss an episode. We tend to get really good audiences in the off season. So we're kind of, at least as far as the show goes, looking forward to the off season. But I also can't wait for that season finale, Gator Bowl, here in my home state. Hoping I can get there, still kind of in the 11th hour on whether or not I'm gonna be able to get up there for a noon kickoff or not. So we'll see how that goes. Definitely envious of Daniel being able to go and with the whole family and enjoy themselves up there, and probably the best thing you could possibly do in Jacksonville is go to a Clemson football game. I think all the rest, everything else is a distant second, including
Wow.
the very successful pro Clemson Tigers for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. And I guess Travis Etienne's little brother is now a pro in the state just north of us in Georgia. But we'll get into that.
Wow. That's Bill
Another
Zimmerman, Zimm. Not me. That was not me. Don't send that don't direct those at me.
signing day in Clemson, which of course is just a wonderful time every year. I think early signing day. I love the haul that we got, and you are particularly happy with one position where we have one of the two best rated players in the class. Those two guys would be uh, linebacker Sammy Brown, who we will get to in a few minutes, but at the receiver position, you've got Bryant Wesco out of the state of Texas, and then you've got TJ Moore out of the state of Florida and that very receiver talent rich area of Tampa. And Daniel, go ahead and let us know why you think these guys are just uh, big additions for Clemson.
Well, I think that Bill, what have we heard the last 3 years? Is it 3 years that Clemson doesn't have enough playmakers on the outside? They've got good players, but they don't have anybody who really scares you to death. When's the last time we saw a Clemson receiver win the quote 50-50 balls that we hear about all the time that were such a big staple of this offense? Go back and look at Trevor Lawrence's first ever touchdown pass as a Tiger, right? The game at A&M, he throws it up, T. Higgins goes and gets it and then does the rest,
Right.
right? And we haven't seen that a lot in the last couple of years. And so I think that's really what has been holding this offense back. I don't think it's the running game. I think the running game's fine. The offensive line hasn't been great, and we'll address that in this group as well. But I think there are two really good playmakers in this class with these two wide receivers. And let's don't forget about Christian Betancourt as well. I think he's a guy that can really help this offense as well and make some plays. A lot like Jake Brenningstool has this past year. I think we saw Brenningstool really take that next step, and he's got a chance to take another step next year. But I like what I see from these guys. Really have kind of looked at their film the last month or so to kind of dig in on them, and especially Wesco. That what he brings, with some size. It sounds like they're going to target a lot more Tyler Browns and Antonio Williamses in this offense, and I'm fine with that, right? But you still need those big guys on the outside who can go win some plays, and it feels like that these two guys can do that.
Yep. And then you get into running back David Ezeamame, just a terrific talent. So many games where he did really well out of Kennesaw, Georgia, 6'1", 200 guy. I am really excited to see him get into that running back room as soon as possible and see how he can stack up against Will Shipley and Phil Maffa if they both return next year. Jay Haynes, Jarvis Green, and Keith Adams Jr. Just a really nice bunch. And at worst, he kind of takes that sixth chair. Dominique Thomas transferring out, won't be back next year. Quadzilla, we wish him all the best where he's going to play. But I'm not sure that Easy Amame ends up being third string, but he certainly helps bring another element of just well-rounded talent. Nice combination of speed and strength. And I think it's going to be a heck of a battle. I'm eager to see a healthy Jay Haynes after we caught some glimpses of him last year.
Yep.
Eager to see Jarvis Green, who had a lot of miles on his legs in high school. He was able to redshirt this past season and wrap his arms around the offense, so he's going to have chances. Like I said, we'll see. I think after the bowl game, what Phil Maffa and Will Shipley have decided as far as what they want to do next season. And then you get into the offensive line, and that was kind of a spot where they made many strides closer to early signing day. We can skip the quarterback position apparently because it's been decided, at least to this point, that there's no need for a quarterback in the class of 2024. You and I have talked about that. So let's go ahead and get into that offensive line. Ronan O'Connell out of Tennessee was the one guy who was committed all season long, and then closing late, new offensive line coach Matt Luke was able to pick up three guys: Mason Wade out of Virginia, 6'5", 290, Elijah Thurman out of Georgia, and then Watson Young from right next door in Daniel High School in Central. No relation to Daniel Shirley, whose West Side Rams won the state title, by the
How
way,
about
if I
that?
remember correctly. Got
How
to
about
get a
that?
shout out to those guys in there. Watson Young, son of Kyle Young, who was in the administration office there in the athletics department at Clemson and a former offensive line standout in his own right. Once Matt Luke was on board, that became a flip, I believe, from App State, if I remember
Yep.
correctly.
Yep.
So they went in a hurry from one commit to four, and I think all those guys are pretty highly regarded, even if they might not be sort of your Blake Miller, Mitch Hyatt, step in as a freshman and compete for a starting job. Guys who can definitely add to the depth. We've heard a lot of talk of depth on that line in recent years, and then we only see 7 guys or so get significant snaps. So maybe this is the group that can start to change that. Let's swing back to Sammy Brown. He's another state of Georgia guy. A lot of people thought he would end up a Bulldog, and he stayed steady to the Clemson Tigers once he made that commitment. Daniel, what do you know about Sammy Brown and what he brings to the table? And I know you said he's with the team already, but nursing
Yeah.
an injury, so he's not working out.
Yeah, he got hurt right at the late in the regular season, I believe, or maybe it was in the playoffs, but I know he got hurt late in the season. He's down in Jacksonville. Just saw video of him walking on the practice field today with the team. He's not practicing. Some of these guys who are down there are practicing, which I love. I think it's a huge benefit to. I mean, you can't do heavy reps, right? And you can't play in the game. We know that, but you get to be around the team. You get to be around the tempo. You see what it's like, to be around the team. What does he bring? Everything. I mean, I think he is a slam dunk, knock it out of the park. Every other sports euphemism that I can use other than football, that's what he is. I mean, he is a really, really good player. I think it says a lot that he didn't waver, right? He committed, and he stuck with it. And even when Clemson was 4-4, and you start to hear, oh my God, this guy's wavering or this guy's wavering. There was none of that with him, and he came out and said it. That's not true. I'm not wavering. I'm going to Clemson, and he signed last week. So I think you got to be really excited about him if you're a Clemson fan. I think he's a guy who could step in right away and play a lot. Now, I don't think he's going to beat out Barrett Carter. I don't think he's going to beat out Drew Wood. I mean,
Wade
Woodaz.
would ask.
Wade Woodaz. Sorry, not Drew. Drew's in this class as well.
Yep.
But I think he's a guy who can play right away. I think he's a guy who will help on special teams as well. He played running back in high school, played linebacker in high school, so he's versatile. He's an athletic freak, and I think
Oh
he
yeah.
brings a lot to this team for sure.
Yeah. Go find some tape on Sammy Brown. I think you'll like it. And of course,
Yes.
one of the things that you and I are going back and forth about is you just have to hope that he can, or any of these signees can latch onto the system that these
Yes.
assistants want to run, that these coordinators want to run. Dabo Sweeney talks about the Clemson offense, the Clemson defense. You would hope that they've done their homework as coaches and they can see, yeah, here are the strengths that make him a fit at Clemson, anyone at any position. I'm not just talking about Sammy Brown here. And then here are the weaknesses that I know I can coach up or I can work around as we do our positions group schemes, as we do our schemes on the side of the ball and the system that each coordinator wants, whether it's Garrett Riley on offense, Wes Goodwin on defense, and make those guys a true fit into what they want to do, and especially with Clemson moving more and more to a 4-2-5, at least last season. You would hope that Sammy Brown is going to be able to get in there and contribute, hopefully in the middle where Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Has departed the program, and to my knowledge, he will not be in the Gator Bowl.
Yep.
Maybe there will be a like that Shaquille O'Neal Christmas game or whatever it was, where he surprises us all and comes out on the field in a Superman cape or whatever. But I don't see that happening. So it does leave you to wonder, will it be Wade Woodaz in the middle? Will it be Kobe McLeod in the middle? Could it be D. Creighton in the middle, a freshman who hasn't gotten a lot of playing time but has been on the field at times and in live ball, not like blowout time, right? Like he's been in there out of necessity a few times, and maybe is going to be able to man that middle spot as well. You hope to see a lot of guys get shots out there. I know Woodaz has typically been more of a Sam, an outside guy like Barrett Carter. Maybe he moves over there and Carter moves into the middle. Maybe it really should come down to who can make their run fits the best out of those guys. And then you'll take your chances with the tackling. But do they have the ability to be in the right place at the right time? At least get a hit on a guy, slow him down. Even if you can't make the finish, at least you can stop a guy's momentum, and then maybe someone else comes in and gets that half tackle alongside you. The other position I think of need is defensive end right now, and you'd be looking at Darian Mayo and Champ Thompson leading the way there, along with Adam Kasai. Less heavy guy coming out of Florida, off the east coast of Florida, more of a long body type of build, needs to add some weight, only listed at 230 right now, according to Rivals. Darian Mayo at 250, Champ Thompson at 275. Those might be some guys who could chip in earlier, especially if they can get onto campus and get into those spring workouts. And then could one of those guys be the next TJ Parker, right? And step up and really make a difference on this defense where it is needed, because they were thin last year. And Parker, I think the term you and I have been using, Daniel, was just a revelation at defensive end for them, rotating in with Justin Maskell and with Xavier Thomas. Now he's got to be like the main link, right? And so it's either going to be one of these freshmen, or it's going to be one of last year's freshmen like AJ Hoffler, or you're going to see someone step up like Cade Denoff or maybe Jaheim Lawson, or you're going to see someone kick outside like maybe Peter Woods or Stephon Green. A lot of question marks, and so you're glad to see three guys there at defensive end. And then I don't know if, Daniel, do you want to talk about defensive backs or build on those comments on defensive end, because it's just another great haul on defense, and this class of 18 was very heavy on defense.
Yeah, I look, I think there's room for guys to find playing time on defense, right? Because so many guys have left, especially up front. And then with Trotter, Trotter's a huge loss. I mean, Trotter was a good player coming out of high school. He became a great player in his time at Clemson. I think he's as good as we've seen at linebacker at Clemson in a long, long time. I would go back to the days of when we were in college, and that group of Levon Kirkland and Ed McDaniel and John Johnson. I mean, he is that kind of linebacker. And so that's going to be a big loss that's going to have to be filled. I like what they've done at linebacker. I like what they've done up front. I like what they've done at defensive tackle, right? I mean, even, I know you mentioned all the defensive ends. I like the defensive tackle group.
Heaven Brown Schuler.
Again, a Georgia guy. Champ Thompson, a Georgia guy. This defense, I mean, just overall, Noah Dixon, a Georgia guy. This is a group of a lot of Georgia guys on defense. Ricardo Jones, who's right here where I live.
Hmm.
in Middle Georgia. I've seen him play several times during his career. Georgia guy. They really went in heavy, and we mentioned Sammy Brown, obviously a Georgia guy as well. So I like the defensive group. I really do, start to finish, front to back, however you want to say it. And I think they have some chances to do some things. And don't forget a guy like Vic Burley, right? Last
Yeah.
year's group who got hurt, had the red shirt. I think that red shirt group from last year, last year, 2023, is going to play a big role as well. I mean, so those guys are considered freshmen, even though they've been on campus a year. They've had a year in the system. They've had a year with the weights and those kinds of things. I think you're going to see a guy like Khalil Barnes. He didn't redshirt, but he's going to take even a bigger step forward, right? Because he's been in the class or in the program for a year. Robert Billings, a guy that has been around for years. So I just think there's so much talent defensively that, yeah, there's some big names that are leaving. I mean, look, XT was there 6 years, right? And I don't know that he ever quite lived up to the whole 5-star stuff and top 10 player and all that, but he was a good player during his time. Justin Maskell became a really good player
Right.
during his time. It's going to be hard to fill those roles. Tyler Davis, really hard to fill what he's brought to the team. But these past two groups especially, I think they've really hit home on these groups, and you're going to see them have big roles coming up. Bill, there's one underrated that we have to talk about. Joe Wilkinson.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
telling you, man. I'm
Tell
telling
me.
you, he's a 3-star, 3-star, and I'm doing air quotes and I'm mocking recruiting. That's Daniel's rant for the day. 3-star. A great player at Rome High School. They've put out a lot of talent at Rome High School. He was one of the best defensive players in the state as
Good.
a safety slash defensive back. And I know he was only committed to App State, all that stuff. He's a really good player. He's underrated. He's a guy that, again, 6'1", 175. He's going to have to come in and put on some weight. He's probably a 2-year down the road kind of a guy. I don't know that he's going to make a huge impact his freshman year. Maybe he red shirts, maybe he helps on special teams, whatever. But that guy can play. And I think you're going to see him have a really good impact on this team. And look, I also think that we talked about the offense. We can't overlook Nolan Hauser.
Oh yeah.
Because first off, what was the biggest issue on defense this year? Fitting run pockets. I think absolutely that was the biggest issue. I think we'll see that get cleaned up. But what was the biggest issue? There were two huge issues on this team this year: turnovers and the kicker.
Yeah.
And I think absolutely they have hit it out of the park with Nolan Hauser, and that could be a huge step forward next year. Think of the games that they lost.
Right.
Duke, how much impact the kicker had on that game. Florida State, how much impact did the kicker have on that game? You missed the short field goal at the end.
Avoid overtime if you make that.
Avoid overtime. If you make it, you win the game. You never trailed in regulation, right?
Right.
Who knows how the season could have played out if you win that game and maybe play Florida State again in the ACC title game or play Louisville and you win the game and who knows? We can't live off hypotheticals. But we know that kicker impacted those two games. It impacted the NC State game. It impacted the Miami game. And if they have nailed it with this young man, that's a huge boost for this team next year.
Yep, absolutely. And who knows? Maybe Robert Gunn figures it out, and we
Absolutely.
see him for a little while. Hopefully, some good competition, but maybe also some good. Easy for me to say. Maybe also some good collaboration between those guys, and they sort of lift one another up and work
Yep.
off one another. But the reports and what I've seen on social media, Nolan Hauser does have that look of a guy who can come in and, if needed, be at least as good as someone who had supposedly retired from the game and had a job lined up in New York City and was able to come in and boy, won the South Carolina game for us
Won the game.
outright,
We have to,
and
yes, and we have to. We talk about him missing in Florida State. You have to say, you have to mention what he did against South Carolina.
oh yeah,
Huge.
absolutely.
They don't win
Yep.
that game, I don't think, without him making those field goals.
Real quick before we move on from signing day, I'm not sure we did the cornerbacks justice in this class. You mentioned the safeties, Ricardo Jones, Noah Dixon, Joe Wilkinson, but I do want to get into the corner position. Ashton Hampton, a nice signee out of Tallahassee, Florida, someone who
Yep.
Mike Reed had to definitely go into enemy territory to lock him down, and he's kind of a seen as a nickel style, someone who can be physical. Someone who also, though, is definitely a corner and qualified to play there. So maybe a little bit of a uh, uh, Cordray Tankersley style, or maybe a little bit of you and I don't like player comps, and that's why I always stammer as I go through these. Sheridan Jones, another one maybe who kind of
That's okay.
compares there.
Right. Yep.
Malcolm Green, but then the two real guys who are viewed as maybe a pure outside island cornerback, Corian Gibson out of Texas, and there it is, Tavoy Fegan out of Tampa. Two guys who I believe both are going to be early enrollees. I don't know if they're there for the bowl game yet, but when we talk about Khalil Barnes, who you mentioned at sort of that nickel spot, and then especially Shelton Lewis, who sort of just mushroomed in his presence late in the season. Those were guys who were there from bowl practice and moving forward. They were on in the spring. They were in hand and able to play. And so when you look at guys like Gibson and Fegan, and you're hoping that they will be able to contribute early and be depth, I think we know the starters very likely are Avion Terrell and Shelton Lewis, who we just mentioned. Terrell, you can say there's a case that, well, you can
Star.
come in the fall and still end up, a starter quality player by the end of the year. But I also think he had some kind of head start uh, with his older brother having played for Mike Reed and having always known Mike Reed and had that chance at least to understand that system early on, to understand if he's just trying to fit in with his high school team and do what his high school coaches asks, what are some of the skills that can make him very game ready for Clemson. And it wasn't an immediate thing for Avion Terrell, but sure, by the end of the year, he looked really, really good. So, again, high hopes for this cornerback class as well, because you do want guys rotating through, playing fresh, and being able to step in by the end of the year if they are needed. So, terrific
I
call
think
on defense. Go ahead.
I think the cornerbacks, I feel about them the same way I do the receivers. I think playmakers, playmakers on defense. And you mentioned the early enrollees. Both of those guys are going to be early enrollees, Corian and Tavoy. Both of the receivers are going to be early enrollees. All four offensive linemen are early enrollees. How big is that to
Yeah.
get them? Maybe it's not even big for this year. It's big for next year when Clemson needs them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they've got a lot of returning offensive linemen. But if you get these guys in that weight room for a year and a half, how big will that be? So, no, I love these two cornerbacks. I love the two receivers. I think this could be a class that could turn things around. Look, the only thing that could have really, I think, elevated this class to a top 5 or whatever, and most of the rankings have them 10 to 12, somewhere around there. I think the only thing that really could have taken this class to that level would have been signing a quarterback, a 5-star, 4-star quarterback.
Yeah.
But they didn't feel like they needed that. Or they weren't able to. There were a lot of rumors they tried to get in on guys late that they didn't nail down. But I think other than that, I really think this is going to be a difference-making class for this program moving forward.
Yep. And hey, if guys opt out after the bowl game, there will be time to try to find February signees. There will be
Yes.
a spring transfer portal period where they can go find guys who maybe are qualified and ready to go and a little more ready to play than the kind of player who's still out there to be signed in February out of high school. Maybe they also understand that they aren't in the mix to be guaranteed a starting job or a huge NIL 6-figure deal or anything like that. So we got about 4 minutes left. We will get into that bowl game real quick, but you and I did talk about, hey, there's only so much you can look at because look at, I'll use Florida State as an example. They thought they were going to be starting quarterback Tate Rodemaker in this game without Jordan Travis, and now he's up and out because Florida State's looking to bring in either DJ Uyunglele what? Or Cam Ward, one of those guys from out west to be next year's quarterback. And Rodemaker said, well, then I need to go find another landing spot. That could happen with Clemson. Could be guys going to the NFL. You don't know one way or the other. And then Kentucky also the same thing. Like, you could be expecting Devin Leary today, and then, his knee feels funny in practice and he decides to go, or one of the many defensive talents that Kentucky has. So in general, and now we're down to about 3 minutes left, I would say for me, my concern is can Clemson win this game in the trenches on offense? Can this offensive line, with time to prepare, with new offensive line coach Matt Luke, can they get the right kind of game plan with offensive coordinator Garrett Riley to move the ball against Mark Stoops' very stout Wildcats defense? And then on defense, I think you are worried about depth in the secondary first and foremost, and being able to make sure that Devin Leary doesn't have guys open left, right, and center. Should a guy need to take a few plays off? Should there be a bad call that pulls a guy off the field? Whatever it might be. I love going into battle with Shelton Lewis and with Avion Terrell back there at corner. No Andrew Makuba at safety. RJ Mickens is back. He has announced that. Khalil Barnes obviously will be there. So they've got guys, they can do the job. There's not a lot of depth. If something goes a little sideways, I don't know. Daniel, what are your top angles to think about on the field, regardless of names?
Well, I will mention a couple of names because I think it says a lot about this group that they are playing. And it's that group up front, because they didn't have to come. Xavier Thomas didn't have to play.
Right.
Justin Maskell didn't have to play. Tyler Davis didn't have to play. And as we record this on Tuesday, they are all playing. Will Shipley. Yes, right. Will Shipley might go to the NFL. If he does, we wish him all the best. But you got to love what he said about transferring, right? I'm not playing somewhere else. I'm a Tiger. And you, as a Clemson fan, that young man will go down as one of your favorites ever. He was announced at graduation right before Ben was, and they had to wait for Shipley's ovation to announce Ben. So Shirley and Shipley are right there together in the alphabetical order. But I think that's huge. That group up front defensively, all of them playing in this game, I think is going to be a big part. Yes, Clemson is shorthanded at cornerback. Who knows who's going to play after those two starters? Dabo said he had a list of guys he's going to move over there and recruit.
Hamp Green was on that list.
So who knows? But if you've got that group up front that can put pressure on the quarterback, that makes the job a lot easier for those defensive backs.
Absolutely. Get in there and disrupt. They have done it week after week with quarterback after quarterback in recent years, and they can do it again, and they probably need to. I think that is maybe the key to the game is just Clemson's rush on defense, pass pressure. And then, can this offensive line give the skilled position guys an ability to move the ball? Well, you will be there and giving us a report. I hope to be there to bring back a report as well. And until next time, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Catch all our old episodes. Comment on this one. Get in on the conversation. The future is bright at Clemson with this signing day. And when we come back at you, we'll have Gator Bowl results and maybe some hoops, right? Until then,
Absolutely.
I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.